Okay, let's talk seriously about polling for a little bit because the amount of misinformation around polling right now is just massive. Every time I talk about this, I take heat, but I don't care. I'll tell you what I think. If you don't like it, there are other shows you can watch that will maybe tell you what you want to hear about polls. If you actually want to engage with me and tell me what I'm not understanding, then listen to or watch the entire segment and then get in touch with me. And then I will issue any necessary corrections. Backstory on polling. Biden, pre his announcement, was around 20% polling. A lot of people wrote in and said, David, it's BS. Bernie, for a while, was leading among the non-declared candidates with 18 to 20%. Biden was 20 to 24. Okay. Eventually, Joe Biden declared his candidacy, shot up, according to a number of polls, to more than 40%. Bernie and Elizabeth Warren saw some declines. Bernie bottomed out at about 14%. However, last week I told you that Joe Biden started to sort of trail off in the polls a little bit. We now seem to be having sort of a homeostasis taking place, an equilibrium, so to speak, because Joe Biden has been leveling off and Bernie Sanders has been leveling off. Now, I'll deal with the believability of these polls shortly. Don't think I'm going to skip that. But it appears as though now in a number of recent polls, Joe Biden down from 42% to 35, Bernie roughly 17% in numerous consecutive polls, really stabilizing, and Elizabeth Warren continuing to pick up about a point to a point and a half per month, up to about 10%. So there are immediate questions. Can we trust these numbers, or are the polls totally fake, rigged nonsense? Question two, do the polls really mean anything this early? And number three, what would move the needle in terms of polling for the candidates at this point in time? First question, can the polls be trusted? Listen, more or less they can be. And here's why I believe that they can be. There are people who write to me and they say, David, the polls are straight up made up out of thin air. It's just plucked out of thin air. The polling companies aren't really doing polls. The DNC is dictating what the polls should say. They are completely and totally made up. If that's true, then eventually the election results should be completely not in line with the polls. And at a certain point, someone's going to need to present some evidence if they believe that the polls are literally concocted out of thin air. Remember, the claim in 2016 was the polls are fake and rigged. And we can't trust them on Trump and Hillary. Well, the national popular vote polls showed Hillary up 2 or 3 points, and she won the popular vote by a couple of points, which is exactly what the polls said. Yeah, I get it. She lost the electoral vote because of about 70,000 votes in 3 states. But anyone saying the polls are way off, I mean, listen, even in the states where she was slightly ahead and lost, it was within the margin of error. The national polls were right, Hillary plus 2 or 3, and that's what it was. So I don't believe the polls are completely fake is a valid assertion. And until someone gives me some evidence that that's the case, that's not my view. Now, is the methodology poor on some individual polls? There are arguments to be made there. Yeah. CNN poll from a couple of months ago that I believe didn't even include young people in the final sampling. That's crazy, if I'm recalling it correctly. The more recent polls are more or less right in their methodology. Harvard Harris, Morning Consult, Quinnipiac, Monmouth, The Hill Harris X, Fox News. But you really have to look closely. For example, people have looked at the Harvard Harris poll and said, David, it's way overweighted for older folks. Only 15% of the population is over 65, but the poll sampled 65 plus year olds at 21%. 21% in the poll, they're only 15% of the population. It's fake and skewed and wrong. Hold on a second, though. This is a likely voter model. 65 plus are the most likely group to vote every election. So it makes sense that 65 plus folks would be overrepresented relative to their population because more of them vote relative to their population size. So again, if you believe it's all fake and made up, I probably can't change your mind. If you want to look at the specific issues with each poll, okay, here we're talking about 21% of the sample is over 65, which makes sense because even though they make up 15% of the population, they are the highest percentage voting group. So if you go through it all, you can find areas to nitpick in each poll, but the results are quite similar. they've stabilized. So short of an out and out total conspiracy where the DNC says to the polling companies, here's what you publish, we are going to get a pretty good idea from these polls. This gets us to question 2. Does it make sense to look at polls this early? Do the polls tell us anything this early about who's going to win? Well, let's look at polls from June of 2015. June of 2015 is equivalent to June 2019 in that it's June of the year before the election year. The 2016 Democratic primary polling at this point in the 2016 election had ABC poll had Clinton 62, Biden 14, Sanders 10. CNN ORC had Clinton 60, Fox News had Clinton 57, and Reuters had Clinton 49. So at this point in the 2016 primary, the polls were indicating Hillary would win, and Hillary did win the primary. Now, the DNC meddled. We've condemned it. I supported Bernie. Remember, we've talked about it all. The point is, if you look at the 2016 Democratic primary or other examples, at this point in time, the polls do have meaning, which gets us lastly to what would change the polls. And for me right now, it's debates. I believe that Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Yang, and Pete Buttigieg, although I'm not a huge Buttigieg fan, I think they have the best chance of improving their polling based on the debates. I believe that Joe Biden is unlikely to have a big surge in the debates. He may trail off a little bit based on debate performance. I think Bernie Sanders is roughly going to hold even after the debates, maybe pick up a couple of points. I believe that it is Warren, Yang, and Buttigieg who have the most to gain in the immediate from the debates. Let me know what you think. I'm ready for it. If you believe that the polls are straight up fake, totally fake news concocted out of thin air, let me know and give me some evidence. If you believe that the polls at this point in time mean nothing, give me some historical evidence. And if you have a different view about who might be helped by the debates, also let me know.